Good day, all you podcasters out there in Podcastville. This is Pastor Rex, the Rex Johnson podcast, and we're coming to you today. This is our September session, and got a great treat for you today. We're excited beyond measure. I get excited about people and about friendships and about things that other people don't get excited about. I get excited about getting up and getting to talk about the good Lord to people. I get excited about seeing people get water baptized and people finding salvation. The things that excite me sometimes don't excite other people, but I also get excited about this podcast because I've been able to bring some wonderful people on board and introduce them to you. Now, most of the folks that I talk to, that I share this program with, are people that I've had a chance to minister with and minister to. And so the person I'm bringing today is in that dynamic. He's a part of that. In fact, if I took time to introduce him, all the things that I want to say about him, it would be the whole podcast. I mean, he's that kind of person.
Thank you, Pastor.
His name is Dr. Kendal Stewart, and he is, first of all, a blood-bought redeemer of the Lord Jesus Christ, redeemed of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he's an amazing man. But secondly, he's one of my dearest friends. He's a member of the board of directors here at Christian Life Austin, and he and his family, his wife, and his sons and daughter are all part of this. But the bottom line is that he's just what he is. He's a true physician that trusts in Jesus Christ. I told him when we were preparing for this, I said, I'm no Paul the apostle, but you are Luke the physician. And Paul had a man named Luke, and I have a man named Dr. Stewart that this kind of takes care of me. He kind of there for me. He never comes to church without making sure I'm all right, checking on me, seeing how I'm feeling, see what I'm going through. And I love that. He's both mental and physical with me, and loves the fact that he gets to do that in my world. So I want to introduce him to you today. We're going to have a little end talk, and then I'm going to let him talk about some things that I think that you'll be blessed by. And he does a podcast himself, and he's got about 30,000 that listen to him because he talks about doctor things. But today, I've asked him and persuaded him to come and be a part of this podcast, and I'm so happy to have him. Dr. Stewart, I welcome you today.
Thank you, Pastor.
Dr. Kendal Stewart, my friend, my golfing buddy, the one that beats me like a drum, especially here lately since I've been going under the knife so much. But the bottom line is that we're friends. We're friends. You're my friend, and it's a great thing to be known as a friend of a friend.
Yes, sir.
It's just amazing. This friendship's not one way, it's two way. And I love you, and I appreciate you as a brother in Christ and as my golfing buddy. In fact, before I turn this over to him and ask him some questions, I was out playing with him one day, and he had these new clubs. They were called PXG. They're made by a man named Parson. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. PXGs. And folks, they look like futuristic clubs. If you ever seen a PXG, they're just amazing looking clubs. But when he put one in my hand, I think he gave me a 7-iron. I hit one of the most flushed shots I'd hit all day. And I said after one shot, I want a club. I want this club. Well, I didn't realize that by making that request that it was going to be taken care of. So a couple of weeks later, I called Dr. Stewart. We talked to each other. And I said, hey, I'm headed to buy me some PXGs, Dr. Stewart. And he said, Pastor, don't do that. And I said, well, what's the matter? You're not hitting them good anymore? What's the deal? What is the deal, doctor? And he said, Pastor, just don't do that. I said, well, I'm headed there now. And I'm pretty animated. I'm headed there now, and I'm pretty determined. And he said, Pastor, I got some coming to your house tomorrow. And I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, my PXG irons and medals arrived at my house. Folks, I've been hitting that ball. Whoever Mr. Parson is that made that club, I want to meet you someday.
Absolutely.
But I've been hitting that club very, very well, and I get compliments when I go out and hit with that club. So, Dr. Stewart, not only are you a friend and a golfing buddy and a board member of this church and a wonderful husband and you're a great doctor, but you're also a purchaser of things for the pastor. And I thank you for that. Give me a bump on that, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Doc, we're glad to have you. We really, really are. And I want you to just kind of explain to people what kind of doctorship you work in and where you are and your practice, and maybe how you arrived there.
Well, listen, that's a really hard question. I actually have, I had a really experienced doctor call me from California the other day, and he said, what do you call what you do now? What kind of specialist are you? And the answer is, I'm a healer.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is I'm actually trained in surgery of the head and neck, and in fact, neurosurgery of the head and neck. And
yes, sir.
My specialty is ear, nose, and throat, but also neurosurgery training. But it's really not what I do anymore. Okay. So
this is the AD. This is that's before.
That was AD. Right? So I'm trained in that, and I did that for many years. Yeah. But what really happened with surgery? Surgery is very rewarding to a certain degree, but it's not really necessarily healing. Mm-hmm. Healing really is about getting the body or enticing or enhancing the body's ability to recover from disease. Mm-hmm. And so my background is also in biochemistry and chemistry.
Right.
And really, I would say that my passion is really in understanding the Lord's methods for doing things down at the cellular level for the body. And so what happened with being a neurosurgical trained doctor is there's one thing a neurosurgeon will never do that every other doctor does. Do you know what that is?
I don't even guess.
It's actually called guessing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. A neurosurgeon.
How's that for an answer?
Yeah. A neurosurgeon will never guess. And so what happened is I was not taught to guess because you're not going to let me cut your head open on a hunch.
No.
So what I need to do is I needed to have proof that we not only had a problem, but we also had a treatment, and then we could have proof that we actually fixed it.
Right.
Because the problem with a lot of the things in the nervous system is a lot of the people are out there suffering and having all these problems, but they look perfectly fine on the outside.
That's true.
So I'll tell you
same way spiritually.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's very closely aligned, and you and I both know that.
Right.
Okay. So what happened is we had to have ways to prove it. And so throughout my career, I've been involved in lots of methods to actually look at how people are built and how we can help them. And most recently, it's really been involved in genetics and what we call a specialty called nutrigenomics. So we can look at how nutritional elements are taken into your body, processed, transformed, delivered.
Right.
And what that's allowed us to do is really see where the weaknesses are in the healing process that God designed.
Wow.
And then put back in only what's necessary and not just throw in the kitchen sink.
Right.
And so really the biggest problem with most people is that doctors are taught, most people go to the doctor, they want relief now, which is fine. You can do that.
Instant, yeah.
But really healing doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
And so what I firmly believe now, which I never was taught and did not believe as early as 5 or 10 years ago, the Lord has given us a method to heal everything.
That's awesome.
Okay.
That's awesome.
But it does take a buy-in from the spiritual side, the health professional side.
Yes.
We've got to have objective proof in the medical side to know what you need and what you don't need so we don't waste our money and our time.
Right.
And if we would focus on that, I think that you'll find out that a lot more people can be healed of their process. Now, you also cannot do that without spiritual help.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you.
Please, I want you to tell the story that you've told me about how this happened.
Yeah.
I think it's neat, Doc. This needs to be told.
Well, so back over 20 years ago, I was invited to lecture on the inner ear to a bunch of occupational therapists. And these people take care of autistic patients, and I was lecturing on autism. And I went to Dallas thinking I was going to lecture to 100 people. It turned out to be several thousand. And I lectured on autism and the inner ear. And before I knew it, I had all these autistic kids coming to see me from all over Texas. And I felt really overwhelmed because autism is something doctors don't really like to see. They don't understand it very well.
Right.
And I wanted to understand it. And so I was praying to the Lord to empower me to help heal these kids because I felt really overwhelmed. And very clearly, Pastor, he told me, you cannot.
You just can't do it.
Clear as the... And I didn't understand. In fact, I was a little bit frustrated because I'm like, did I really hear that? And then he told it to me again, you cannot. Well, I like to think I got a little righteously mad, but I kept praying. And then sure enough, one day I heard it very clearly in my head. Now, if you'd like to know how I can heal him, you let me know.
Wow. Wow.
And so I'll tell you the truth, and my wife can verify this. I humbled myself before the Lord. I said, I will do you one better, Lord. I will invoke the name of Jesus every patient I see from now on. Okay? And my wife can tell
that kind of got him on board.
Well, let me tell you what he did, because it's
that.
crazy, because I don't understand it.
Right.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 separate times, a month apart, I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning with all kinds of crazy chemistry thoughts in my head. And I would go to the computer and start working through them, and every one of them worked out. And between that few month period and 6 months later, the ability for us to understand what was going on in those people was just enormously different. And so I believe it was a gift given to me.
He just enlightened you, yeah.
And just enlightened me, because I said, show me.
He can do that.
Happened.
He healed you to heal others.
Yeah.
That's what he did, doctor. Yeah.
And so I have gone through that promise. And I'll tell you what's really interesting, because doctors are taught to not talk spiritual with patients.
Right.
That's what they're taught. Don't get into that. You might offend somebody or something. That's the opposite with me. I'll go in to visit with a patient, and I'm telling you, there'll be some point in the conversation and I'll invoke Jesus' name and talk about the Lord, and those people become instantly relaxed, instantly interested, and it is just a wonderful thing. So I've never found any situation where I regretted invoking
or where
his
you
name.
were withstood.
Oh, yes.
Because when, that's your practice.
Oh.
They're coming into your store. That's your practice. They're coming into your office.
And it took me a while to realize that.
Yes, that's yours. And this is not separation of church and state. This is the fact that you can evoke the name of the Lord over their lives.
Well, it's not just the name of the Lord. I can't heal anybody.
No, you can't. No,
I can't. But I sure can ride his coattails and be the messenger.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And so that's what I tell them. I say, when you get well, you can tell your friends, but you thank the good Lord, because it's not me.
Wow.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand.
And that was a huge lesson for me, because you know.
And then there's I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, sir. Then there's this thing on the backside of that this doctor who trusts in the Lord to help him with these situations, where does he attend church? Where does he go to church?
Absolutely.
Where's he getting this? Where's he getting this fact that Jesus comes alongside, the Spirit comes alongside, the Paraclete, to assist us in life?
Right.
And you're so freely to tell people that this is where I go, and people have come to this church because of your witness in your office, Dr. Stewart, and I thank you for that.
Well,
in fact, I think that deserves a hand clap.
I thank the church for that.
Because
because it's the spirit of the people around, and the boldness of you and the pastoral staff and all the people who go here, the boldness of our openness for the need and the desire to have the Lord involved in our life.
Yes,
it's just
right.
It's eye-opening.
Relationship, not just checking a box here. It's a relationship with Jesus,
And you and I have had this discussion before. There were times I struggled mightily with church.
Right.
Not the Lord
right.
necessarily, but with church.
Yeah.
And so coming to a place where all the blessings and the gifts are honored, there's no critical nature to the process. There's no man's rules.
No judgmentalism.
No judgmentalism.
No.
Is really freeing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of people keep it at the church and don't carry it other places.
Yeah.
And boy, but you carry it into the workplace. To me, it's been...
Doctor, that's exactly where I was headed, because there's a lot of people, when they walk out the door, they take off this garment of Christianity and they go out there and do their thing. And then when they come back in, is my garment clean? Can I put it back on and go in the church? But when people take what is infused into them to their workplace, it is just absolutely a fulfillment because winning souls is the most beautiful thing a person can do. It's like you getting saved all over again when you win a soul to Christ. and you're sending so many. We had just a young lady and her son. You've been his physician. Her son, they came for the first time the other day, and she said, I go to a doctor. I go to a doctor that goes to church here. And she said, who would that be? And I said, you have a son? She said, yeah. I said, it's Dr. Stewart. She said, that's him, Dr. Stewart. And she knew it was you, but she wanted me to tell her that you came here. And I said, yeah, he'll show up after a while himself. He'll be here. But the bottom line is that when you walk out the door, you don't hang up your Christian clothes and put on your doctor clothes.
No.
You walk out there as a Christian, and you're a Christian doctor.
And, the thing is, people don't understand how much that blesses you.
Oh, it does.
People think they have to hide it, and the more you hide it, you're just blocking the blessing.
Yeah, and we don't use it as a rubber stamp. We don't use it as we're stamping people. We just use it as we're Christ ambassadors in whatever we do. Whatever we do. Dr. Stewart, I have discovered that our church it's a fairly large church now, but I've discovered everywhere I go, I'm going to run into this church.
Yeah,
I'm going to run into it some way. I went over across the street to have lunch today with a retired pastor, and a guy walks up and said, Pastor Rex, I don't want to interrupt your meal, but I just want to shake your hand and say thank you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't call the man's name. I didn't know who he was, but nice-looking guy, sharp guy, comes to church here, gets his soul fed. And, it's a beautiful thing to have that kind of church where people don't walk in and have to cover their head and say, oh, God, hope I don't get barraged today with something heavy. And there's people that take the gospel out and they share it in a generous, beautiful way, and you're one of those people. Tell me a little bit, Doctor, about this concussion protocol thing that you worked with the NFL. Just give me a little insight on that.
So basically, I had a background in sports. We had a great interest in balance and coordination. And in the late 90s, we actually ran into a problem, mostly with athletes, that's been a problem forever. And that was that athletes, once they get a concussion, will lie and tell you anything to get back on the field.
Right.
If you don't think an athlete's a liar, then you haven't been around a lot of athletes. Okay, because they think they're play. Including me.
Yeah.
I would have lied.
Yeah, because they think it's the end.
Right.
They don't
now,
get back on
what
the
we
field.
started doing, we had this platform test. What we were looking for was a test that you could not fake. And we started noticing something really simple about things is that when people would get hit on the athletic field, car wrecks are a little different, but on the athletic field, that they would actually sway directly in the plane they got hit in. So if they got hit on the side of the head, they'd sway sideways when we tested their balance.
That's unbelievable.
If they got hit
That's
on the front,
unreal.
they'd sway front to back, and it was always in the plane. And so we realized there was actually two types of concussions. One is where your brain gets dinged and those people become knocked out and really they're just not there. The second one is where we actually damaged the inner ear, but we only damaged the plane we got hit in. And so we started calling that a vestibular concussion. Well, the problem—
Say that 5 times.
Yeah. Well, the problem with that is that creates a big problem because if you can't control your sway in that plane, and let's say you're a quarterback and you roll out, you'll put a lot of strain on your knee and they'll wind up blowing their knee out for no reason. And so we started using it, and we started at UT, we started doing some studies, and boy, we made a lot of athletes mad because we kept them off the field.
Yeah.
But what it did is it gave us a milestone of understanding what we would call a baseline and understanding when they were hurt and when they were ready to go back. And so we actually started using that with NFL players. And really interesting in the NFL, I did not get into the NFL through concussions. I got into the NFL by taking a couple of general managers' kids with autism. And once I was able to help them, I then became their concussion doctor.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand?
Okay. Once again, it was your
It's a very political, it's a political organization. But the long and the short of it is we actually created a whole program for the UIL of the state, but we made some people mad and other people that didn't understand what we were doing. The long and the short of it is it really turned out for the better because in another instance, if we start looking at people following car wrecks, the problem with a concussion is you look perfectly fine on the outside. You don't look like there's a problem. But some people are literally devastated on the inside. So in car wrecks, we have the other problem.
Yeah.
We have people who got hurt and we don't know if they're telling us the truth or not.
Right.
So we're actually able to use a lot of these tests to actually show us when people are actually damaged.
Yeah.
And actually by using certain things to actually help them recover or speed their recover them back and be able to tell when they're well.
So are you still involved in that some?
I read about 20 studies a week.
Okay.
With mostly with car wrecks these days.
Yeah.
I turned over my UT responsibilities to another person, and but we still see a lot of athletes. But the problem is you really got to have some form of objectivity to deal with problems of the nervous system, because people, if you break your leg and your leg's not working, people feel really sorry for you. But you can have a messed up nervous system and you look fine and nobody knows you're sick, and that frustrates people because doctors blow them off.
Yeah.
They really do. And so I like to always say, and it's just one lesson, I believe the patient, I believe the parent until I can prove otherwise.
Right.
Because I think doctors, I think it's an arrogance that sometimes comes that if they can't find the answer, they blame the patient or saying that I don't believe in that at all. And, Cherry gets me all the time. She's probably tricked me 3 or 4 times with this. It's kind of silly.
That's your wife.
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah.
And I'll come home complaining that I can't get this patient well. And she just goes, "Baby, look at your hands." And so I look at my hands and she goes, "I don't see any nail marks."
Oh, dear me. Way to go, Cherry. Way to go. Way to go.
So she puts me back in my place. But boy, I really believe that if you go practice medicine, you do things with objectivity, you care a lot. I spend a lot of time with my patients. You
do.
Got to talk to them. It's frustrating to people because I don't take insurance, but I have people pay cash, but I don't charge big fees. But I just can't spend 5 minutes with you and figure you out.
Yeah.
And so basically,
I'm proof text of that.
Yeah.
I'm proof text of that. Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we're thorough with it. And if we don't use the spiritual side to all of our advantage, we just won't be successful.
Dr. Stewart, as I said, has been a friend a long time, and I go to his office and see some of his people that can help me. I get, what is it, doctor? Infusions of vitamin C and
glutathione.
And glutathione, mm-hmm. Yes. And it's absolutely, especially since I'm a little older now, not old, but a little older. It has been such a tremendous up for me, such a tremendous blessing for me. And besides that, I'm usually beside 2 or 3 people. We're all getting these IVs, and I get to meet new people out there, and we get to talk about this good man. But Dr. Stewart, we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about this when we rehearsed a little bit. What do you see as the future? Like toward cancer or toward some of this stuff. Do you think that there is something out there that could help us, that could help humanity, or do you just propose the fact that there is a sickness unto death? I know as a doctor, you're a fighter.
You just opened a can of worms. I could probably talk about that for an hour.
Yes, sir.
Easy. I'll tell you my personal philosophy.
Okay, sir.
So I trained at MD Anderson, the cancer hospital, and I did my research there and my residency there.
Red Duke?
I knew Red quite well, actually. I got some funny stories about him too. But so we've actually realized that many cancers are actually formed by viruses. Viruses can carry the potential of DNA or other things into the cell to make them cancerous. And I like to think that the Lord built a beautiful, perfect DNA. And these viruses that we have, which I call tools of the enemy, they carry DNA because I believe that the enemy has created these things to actually insert bad information to this perfect plan.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is the way that man approaches things like cancer, to me, is that we're always treating and trying to put out fires instead of being proactive or enhancing the things that God has already given us.
Right.
So cancer is a great example. In theory, we all make cancer cells, and we have these special cells in our immune system called natural killer cells that are supposed to kill the cancers that we make. The problem is something gets off in one of those sides. Either the cancer starts growing too fast where we can't keep up, or the natural killer cells can't do their job as effectively, and the cancer then takes off.
Right.
So where we're really heading, you've heard about immunotherapy in cancers, which is where we actually take and target the ability of the immune system to attack the cancer, enhance the ability. I really think that is the future of treatment. And I think it has a much greater chance of being successful than anything man's come up with, because man's is about killing, and that one is really about enhancing something that the Lord has already given us.
Right.
And so I think the future of where we're going is that we're gradually going to come full circle, because I used to think we actually invoke the name of the Lord a lot. And I think we've been taught to not do that, and man's tried to come up with his best ideas, and invariably it is never going to be as good as what the Lord has designed.
Right.
It cannot.
Right. Right.
In fact, I'll tell you, in medicine, I have a huge fondness for drugs that were created in the 1970s. Do you know why? Because they were made from plants.
Yep.
Because God made them.
Yep.
That's what
God's
we used
planning.
to use.
Yeah, God's planning. Yeah.
So man has just taken those and manipulated them and gets new patents, and really is about making money. And I don't mean to get into that concept, but I think the more we actually start using what the Lord already gave us and enhancing that ability, I think we will ultimately be successful at controlling most of these problems. Now, on the other hand, too, I think the big rise in many of the cancers that we've seen, too, are also our own doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's things in our environment, things that we
Processed stuff that we eat, maybe.
processed food, chemicals that we use in the environment. And so I think there's a whole world, but I think of discussion around this, but I think what we're really going to be able to do is we'll learn the hard way. It might be, I'm an out of the box guy right now.
You really are.
I would like to think that 10 years from now, I'm not out of the box. I like to think that I jumped out of the box 4 or 5 times in my career and was a quack, and now I'm a guru. Do you know what I mean?
I got you.
So
I got you.
I go out of the box as fast as I can get, but out of the box within reason. And so I think we're going to find out as we move back to utilizing what the Lord has put in us, we're going to be far more successful.
I think I've been privileged to pastor some outstanding people in my life, and I've had physicians that I call friends and pastored them. But I had a man here that had a doctorate in education, and he was what I considered a brilliant man. But I don't know when I've ever pastored anyone that is so down to earth and has so much to say. There's doctors in this church that go listen to Dr. Stewart when he gives his speeches at these conventions, and they come back and say they learned something from this man. And so it's an amazing thing to not only call him friend, but to call him a wonderful member of this congregation, and then to have the responsibility the last 15 or so years. I am in a retired position now, but have him to preach to. And then when I get through speaking, he probably one of the first to come up and tell me, thank you for that. Thank you for speaking to me today. We all need each other. And I love this man. I love him as a brother. And I love the fact that he's competing. He's competing against the things of life that want to tear down the human body and the human mind. And I love that. He's not stopping. He's not relaxing. Oh, we play golf, but he gets time off too. And pastors need time off, and so do physicians.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy that I got to interview him today and talk to him. And we could go on for hours, because he could talk about any subject that I would throw at him, because he's that good at where he's at. So, Dr. Stewart, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I thank you.
It's my problem.
And this podcast is going to be heard, and it's going to be talked about, and people are going to tune in, and there's probably going to be some people knocking on your door and say, will you take us as a client? So I appreciate and love you very much, and I love your family. I love your daughter. I love your sons. I love your sweet wife. Y'all are all just precious.
Thank you.
But you're my doctor, and I love you to the moon and back. And I've said that many times, that you're good enough that I think I can go to Mars and back with you. You know, it's a longer journey. So thank you for tuning in today. God bless all of you that tuned into this podcast, and we ask you to just send us some information, what you would like. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. We got some more coming up in the month of October and November and December. God bless you, and we'll check you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.